Have you ever wondered how Stripe let millions of developers access their API securely? Or how Auth0 or Okta handles millions of machine-to-machine authentication requests every day? Here is the thing. You might remember you are using YouTube developer API, Facebook API, Twitter APIs and all. These are what you need to do is you need to go to their developer platform, you need to create your API keys like on the Stripe, Twilio or AWS. They have solved all these problems really nice way, which we are facing right now. How do you expose your APIs to customer? Then let them authenticate securely, manage their own credentials, rate limiting, all without writing a custom auth layer for every new integration. So let's say I want to, YouTube already has a developer APIs, right? What I do is I go to the developer console, I create my API keys, secrets. So what all different ways in which you build your platform and you let your customer access your APIs securely, either using OAuth, using API keys, using machine-to-machine communications and all. So in this video, I'm going to show you how exactly you can build a public API platform that handles the API keys, auth credentials in same way like Stripe, Okta, Auth0 or AWS Cognito is doing it. Recently, I built an amazing product, right? Your APIs are solid, but now customer want to integrate with your program, with your APIs, with your product programmatically. They have some data which they want to sync on the fly through their external system. They want machine to machine communication and they want to push and pull the data from your platform. The question is, how do they authenticate? Because they are not going to log in. It's not a web application. They want a machine to machine. Do you just give them username, password? That doesn't work. You need a proper authentication system, not just any system. You need one that scale, supports self-service and give you the visibility of your APIs. So the problem here is, through this diagram, I will try to explain. Let's talk about the problem. First, the authentication. How does your customer and backend proves that this is what you really are, right? So in this architecture, so your customer is your customer's backend. What they are going to send you, they will send you the API request. This is your developer portal, which is letting the external customer to come inside authentication layer, API gateway and your API, right? So the customer backend needs to authenticate to all our developer portal or whatever authentication layer, not by just using username and password. We need to provide some different mechanism for them to enter in our system. I mean, there are many ways. Like Stripe or Twilio, what they do is they provide an API key. You get an API key like SK Live, like SendGrid, Twilio, Auth0, Okta also provide you the client ID and a secret, which generates the JWT token, and through that you can access programmatically. AWS Cognito gives you app client ID configuration. Twilio gives you account SID and the password. So all these platform gives you some way to access these public API platform. Twilio is a big system. They build a developer portal, developer APIs where user can come, create SID and can access their systems, the chat infrastructure programmatically. So there are many ways in which you can manage all those things. You build a nice APIs which your customers want to integrate with a third-party platform where they want to push, pull and sync data. What you can do is your APIs, you can enable them to create API keys which you can store on your platform, and they will send the API key through the headers, XAPI key or any other thing, which you will validate and which you will allow your customer to access the data. Or auth client credential, what you will do is same as the Cognito or Okta or Auth0, what you can do is you can provide an API endpoint to your customer like auth token. You allow them to create client ID and client secret through some of your APIs. I mean, obviously, when I go to YouTube developer API, Twitter developer API, first I need to be logged into the system. So once I can provide a UI interface where they will log in first, that is a step one. Then they can create a client ID and a client secret. That is a step two. And then they can use client ID and a client secret. This is called OAuth flow. Using that client ID and client secret, they can generate a temporary, the access token. That access token they can pass in my actual production APIs to access the data. This is another option. So there are two options I explained. One is the API key Your developer portal, which you have built with a small, nice UI interface, allow customers to create API key and send the API key in the headers, or allow them to create a client ID and client secret. You can, in the background, you can use a AWS Cognito or any other platform. Let them create a client ID and client secret, which you can store in your system, and then let them send client ID and client secret and give them this token. Now, in the background, you might use a Cognito. You don't need to expose. You can expose your own API's auth token, client ID, client secret, and a grant type, and then you give them the token. So with that token, they can do a machine-to-machine communication, and they can easily access your platform. So what we did is, here API key structure is simple, PKSK or whatever prefix you wanted to do. The live environment, PKSK, public key, secret key, live your environment name and your API key. This is your API key structure. You allow your customers to create API key, and then they can use this API key to send in the authorization header. You validate it. If it is valid, then you allow them to use your APIs. Now we need to take care of these 5 things before exposing our public API platform. Authentication, we need to build authentication system so that we can identify who is requesting without doing login or without doing login from browser or anything. We need to provide a self-service so that customers can issue and manage their credentials like API keys and the tokens. Rate limit, we need to rate limit the APIs requests which are coming from a particular user or an IP. We should be able to do instant revocation and audit who is calling. So once your problem is solved, we need to pick the pattern. We can follow the pattern which Stripe is following by API key, or Okta with the credentials, or Cognito, or the Twilio. So these are 4 separate layers. Developer portal, which is considered as a self-service portal where customer can create keys, register auth application, view and use their analytics. So this is same as providing a developer portal by Google Developer, Okta, Auth0, SendGrid, Twilio. Then authentication, we need to validate the API keys, run our auth token endpoint, validate their API keys, client ID, client secret, and token. API gateway, cross-cutting concerns, we can do a rate limiting, quotas, logging, analytics, and all. And finally, your APIs. So it's like the 4-layer cleanly separated architecture. This is the most simplest architecture or simplest flow where you can just provide either API key prefixed with the PK, primary key, public key, secret key, right? And the API key. Customer will manage it and they will just send it in the API headers. I mean, while saving this API key in our platform, we need to Bcrypt it. We just store the hash version of it. This is called enterprise grade machine-to-machine flow. You will use the developer portal, register your auth application, you will receive a client ID and client secret, and once you receive them, you can generate issue a token by passing the client ID and client secret and the grant type. You will get a bearer token, and then you will use that bearer token to access the APIs. It is the typical flow which Cognito, Auth0, and all these follows. And when it comes to implementation, it is quite easy because what we are doing is at the end either we are getting API key in the request or authorization header which we have got by passing the client ID, client secret, and grant type. The auth server gives us the token, and that short-lived token for 10 to 15 minutes we have to pass to access the APIs. Finally, these are like 7 rules, no exceptions, which we need to follow. Never store the plain text, the API keys and the secrets. Use RS256 for the token. Limit per customer, because there can be a noisy customer which is eating all the limits. Audit everything, who is accessing your API platform, analytics, and all those things. Show secret only once, because when you see any developer portal, you're able to see secrets only once. You copy the client ID and secret, and then if you don't have it, you need to revoke and create new one. Short token expiry for the auth flow. Instant revocation means once you invoke the keys, they die right away. So I can build the whole platform with just 4 tables technically: customers, auth client, API keys, and API users logs. I mean, there can be a variety of ways in which you can build the whole public API platform. So finally, we need to build a platform which developer can trust. Two methods, API keys auth, one identity, secure by default.